Well, good evening. It's been a while since I've been to speak before town council, and it's nice to be here. Chuck has asked me to speak a little bit about what's going on at the library, what we've been doing as far as programming and outreach to teens. Also, there's been some questions about why we have the hours that we have. So hopefully I'll give you some things to inform you on those subject matters, but we're also, maybe you'll have some questions afterwards. I'm going to speak on this a little bit, then I'm going to have Mr. Don Buzzard, who's been at the library for almost 20 years now, give a little bit of perspective from the long term, because he's been through many directors and many changes to the library. So I think hearing his perspective will give you some better understanding as well. This past year, we've finally gotten out of COVID and we're able to start doing programming again. And we had a very successful Black History Month program with Mr. Ken Conklin speaking on the life of Norval Lee. We were able to have a organization come in called Wills on Wheels, and they did a nice presentation. In fact, we got so many good compliments on that. That's the best presentation they've heard on wills and trusts and all that they've ever been to. So those were both very successful programs. We haven't done any additional adult programming yet, but I'll speak about that in a few minutes. But one of the things that we noticed as we came out of COVID was the impact that COVID had on our children and teens in particular for particular areas. But we decided that we needed to take and focus on the area of mental health. So we have reached out to Allegheny County Public Schools, to the CSB, and some others. And we are going to be working on developing programs that reach out to kids and especially to teens. There are some organizations that have started to pop up. You'll probably see commercials for them about the impacts that social media have on teens. So I reached out to Chris Fisher from the Sheriff's Department and Jason Conaway from the Allegheny County Public Schools, the folks at the CSB, Sandra McHenry, and they all agreed that putting together programming that is both informative and helpful for both teens and parents would be a good thing to do. So they're very encouraged that the library is kind of leading this effort. Our friends of the library are going to be very involved in this new initiative, and Travis Hart in particular is been leading the way in attending meetings at CAP and has been reaching out to people in that group. And we hope to have something in place and to roll out here sometime in the middle of fall. I really think that it's very, very needed. I mean, we do a lot of programs, have done a lot for adults. I think it's time we started reaching out to the kids more. I've also talked to the principal at Allegheny High School about getting some volunteers to either be part of our Friends of the Library group. As far as his students go, this could be an opportunity to give them hours for community service, or perhaps put together even a teen advisory group. So we could get to hear what they think they need. And that would not necessarily be limited to just mental health issues, but things in general that they would like to see, because there is not often that we have a lot of teens come into the library. We do have some that come in mostly to study, occasionally get on the computers, but we just do not see a lot of participations. So we thought this was both an opportunity to help them and also engage them in dialogue about things that they deem important to them, that we could perhaps also provide programming and events and such. With that in mind, we're also looking at putting together a Star Wars May the 4th Be With You program for next year. The 4th of May is going to be on a Saturday, and we thought this would be another great opportunity to give things that especially the teens and the tweens would really enjoy doing. Comic-Cons that we've done previously were very successful, and they were not sustainable in the model that we used, but I think if we could get going with something like this and do some sort of an event annually, it's starting with this Star Wars event, that we could perhaps get more kids involved in the library and in the community as well. One of the things that Chuck has been getting a lot of answers on, or questions on, and I'm hopefully going to provide some insight, is the hours that we've adjusted to. Now, we periodically take and evaluate what hours we have. We've done surveys. We mark off the number of people in a particular hour, and we decided, because of the lack of people coming in between, say, the 6 and 7 o'clock hour, and even just after 5 to 7, that we would adjust the hours, because we had more requests to open early than we did to close later. There's some people that have suggested that we should do an adjustment of the hours and say start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and close at 8 or 9 o'clock. I can tell you from personal experience, and staff, Mr. Buzzard can speak to it, is that between those last couple hours, that 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, virtually no one comes in. There have been times where the last hour, if anybody remembers Jake Atkins, it was simply me and Jake Atkins, and Jake was over on the computer doing genealogy studies. So, do you want to get that? So we decided, after listening to our patron base, like I said, we had done some gathering of data for that, and we'd ask personal opinions, because we always had people showing up early wanting to get in early, and we discovered that based on the statistics we were keeping, that the majority of the people that were coming in were older, mature adults, and they wanted to get in and get their business done in a time frame that allowed them to do things while other businesses were open, or whether they were submitting something through a fax or a scan or online to a governmental agency. So we decided that it was best to really go the direction of moving to earlier hours and having the earlier closing. We're still open 2 days per week till 5:30, but we noticed that once people are off work and they have finished their work day or their day with, they've got the kids from school, they want to have dinner, they want to get homework done, they want to, sometimes kids have sports, and as Coach Dale will tell you. A little aside note, he was my son's first coach in Little League to where, just aside, he's doing really well.
Awesome.
And I appreciate all you poured into him, teaching him baseball. So anyway, just wanted to let everybody know that we are really trying to pay attention to what our patrons are telling us. Our two circulation people are usually Iris Gilbert and Kathy Clark, and people will specifically come in and ask for those two, especially if they're working on something. They need help on the computers, they need help doing a special faxing, a special scanning, making copies. People will bring in their own card stock. These ladies are so adept at helping with things on the computer, helping fill out forms. People will come in because they don't have a whole lot of computer skills, and our staff really goes the extra mile to help them. But these people are coming in during the daylight hours. They're not going to come in at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. The suggestion to do a closing till 8 and maybe even opening later in the day simply does not meet the needs of our patron base. They want to be in, say, 10 in the morning or 11 o'clock or noon to get their paperwork done, to get a book or whatever else they do. But there's just never a need for somebody to do something like that in those hours. I give Chuck this analogy. It's imagine somebody wanted Kroger's to stay open till 11 o'clock. But to do that, they had to funnel time and away from earlier in the day. Say you couldn't have as many people working at 5 o'clock when everybody's coming through on the way home. Well, you don't want to reduce your staff and reduce the quality of service that you get at 5 o'clock at Kroger's by making them stay open till 11 o'clock when maybe only 3 people may come in. It just doesn't make sense on a service end. It also doesn't make sense on the end of having the quality of service that we are offering them. One of the other things we really need to emphasize is how needed we are just for those little things that we do, like the copying, like the scanning, like the faxing. As people come in and they need help putting together a paper or doing something specifically with photos, our ladies are very adept at helping people on those computers. And again, if we don't have somebody there because they're working late, it means somebody's going to have to wait an extraordinary amount of time, or they might not get anything done that day at all. So having the people, the amount of staff there to support what we're doing at certain times of day is essential, in my opinion. I also wanted to say that the needs are changing for people. So many people have, used to come in and get books, and we still get a certain amount, a goodly amount of people. But we've also noticed there's been a real increase in the amount of online services that people want. We offer what you would call like our version of a curbside service. So people can either call in or they can electronically send us a request, and we'll have books and DVDs ready to go for them that they can pick up at their leisure. We also have the opportunity for people to call in and specifically ask for certain types of books or certain authors, and we will be glad to look out for those. One of my board members said that she stopped even asking Iris to set aside a book because Iris already knows what she wants. So she'll just say, Iris, I'm here. You got anything for me? And Iris said, oh, yes, I do. So we really take it seriously, the meeting the needs of our patrons. And I can't say enough good things about our staff and the way that they go out of their way to help people. Ms. Clark has been particularly helpful. There's a immigrant family, and she's gone out of her way to help hook them up with the people that they need to know for getting a child enrolled in school. We'll sit on the computer with them and help them fill out forms. So I can't say enough good things about the staff and the way that they really reach out and help people. Back to the mental health. During the summer, we did some work with Sue Ellen Haver, who's a speech teacher and special education teacher up in Rockbridge, and she's got her own little ministry called Muscles with Russell. With her Stratfordshire Terrier, Russell, she puts together programs to work with kids. In fact, Russell's probably more popular at her school than she is. The Muscles with Russell's program, we called them kindness classes. And again, the emphasis was on getting kids to look at themselves and feel better about themselves. They even were able to reach out and touch the parents that came with them and help them look at themselves in a different way, in a better way. So these kindness or happiness classes we provided all summer long. Our summer reading program, the events were all along the lines of the theme, which was All Together Now, which we also focused on things like from Bright Star Theater, bullying, and the being kind to one another and helpful and encouraging to one another. And so that mental health theme was even towards the younger kids over the summer, and we're hoping to continue that into the future as well. One last thing on the hours. We all know that the world is gradually changing and not always for the better. So an additional concern if we extended hours is you've typically got one individual that's closing the library. And as you can see, we have 2 staff members that are ladies, and I don't know about you, but I am not comfortable asking them to close the library up at, say, 9 o'clock and then ask them to go out to their car and go home when they roll up the sidewalks, and so there's not a lot of traffic going by, foot traffic, or cars going by at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. So I think that's also an area of concern that justifies our having the hours that we do.
I've been with the library since 2005, and was a patron long before that. And the building itself was renovated to its current status, I think in '95. And that's when the hours were set by Michael Armstrong. And we were on those hours until COVID came along. The biggest issue patrons had with the hours that we used to have is that we opened at 3 different times during the week and closed at 3 different times during the week. They'd call them, what days are you open? What time do you close? They were all, so this was an issue that we always had to deal with. But it was set in stone. Michael had established the hours. They were posted on the side of the building. That's the way it was going to be. I've been through 5 different directors. He's number 5. And they all had different opinions as to, what we could do about it. We eventually decided, once COVID rolled around, to look real close at what patrons really needed from the library, the older population that we tend to serve more to. They needed early hours, not later hours. They wanted somebody to help them in the morning, because by the end of the day, it was the end of the day. And when we decided to go with the 9:30 opening every day of the week, that simplified things a good bit. We're open 2 days, a little later each day for those that need a little extra time. But we found that most of the patrons, the older patrons that come in, are primarily in the morning and before lunch. We get lots of computer people who come in and want to use it during the day, but for the most part, we see more older AM, early morning activities. So when we reestablished the time frame, I went back and looked at it real close. In the old time frame of hours of operation, it was open 41 hours a week. When we changed it from 9:30 like we do now, we're actually open 42 hours a week. We're open longer in the times that people need us. We even are there at 8:30 in the morning most of the time, 2 of us anyway, and people who need extra help or need the community room, they can even come that early. So the issue of hours extending to 7 or 9 or whatever, we just see that as counterproductive. It's just wouldn't be a good use of our time and the public's funds. We hope what we do is useful to those that come by. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for me?
I have one. What are your hours on Saturdays and Sundays?
Just Saturdays, we're open 9:30 to 1. We are closed on Sundays.
So that gives people, you can get off at 5 o'clock. Time to
Yeah,
get on
there's
Saturdays and do.
two-
It seems like you're catering to the older generation. The newer generation has grown already.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting because the older generation, they don't necessarily have as good computer skills, but I think some of the reason that we don't see the younger kids, teens in particular, is because they have their Chromebooks, and so they simply don't need to come in to use the computer. In fact, often if you roll by Church Street on an early evening by the library entrance there, you'll see somebody sitting there working with a Chromebook or working with a phone, maybe plugged into the outlet there to power up whatever electronics they have.
Is your Wi-Fi on all night?
Yes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had to kind of, how shall I say this kindly? I had to insist with the tech folks that we needed to have broader hours. Because, I mean, there's literally been times, like when I was going, if I needed to go to a meeting in Richmond, and I needed to be there by 8, and I forgot something like a set of directions at the library, and I'd stop in to get that, and there was 1 or 2 cars sitting out there utilizing the Wi-Fi. So
How's vandalism now?
that has cut back some, but it's still a concern. And another one of the issues we used to have when we were open till 7 is occasionally we would get kids coming in, mostly teens, some tweens, that would start to act out. And so then a staff member has to go chasing them through the sides of the library to ask them to leave or to change their behavior. And again, taking them away from doing something else more productive.
Do you think the Wi-Fi being open, available all night contributes to the vandalism?
No, because for a good long while, we did not have any vandalism at all. I have asked Bridget to see if we can find the money to go ahead and purchase cameras that we would put on the exterior. One of the places we could also have the camera looking at would be the front part of the amphitheater, where some of the vandalism has taken place in the form of destruction of the little free library. But we haven't noticed much since we had that one bout in the summer.
Have you priced cameras?
Yes.
Do you have any idea, money-wise?
Off the top of my head, I'd say around $6,000.
$6,000.
Mike, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Appreciate everything y'all do. Appreciate your dedication to the library.